All right, guys. What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to InvestQ Live. And tonight we got a pretty interesting live stream for you guys, as we do got a big day tomorrow, and there's a few things that we got to cover relating with space stocks and Big Bear AI as well, and a future other things relating to the broader market. So, first off, let's take a look at the FinViz heat map together, my friends. So when we take a look at that, we're going to see here that, in fact, because I haven't looked at it ever since market close. So let me just double check it real quick. So today what we're going to see is it's going to be a very interesting looking type of day. As when we look at the screen, we're going to see here that, so semiconductors did have quite a big day. Again, you see Nvidia looking pretty big. Ticker symbol AVGO Broadcom had a big day. AMD had a monster day with an 8% rally on the day. And wow, Micron up almost 12% on the day. There is lots of strength in the semiconductor sector right now. And that is very interesting because there is some other news that came out related to inflation that came out. So it does appear that the broader market did view that as manageable, but without going too far on a tangent, and so that we can stay on track with what it is I wanted to talk about from one thing to the next, is it does show here that investors are still aggressively buying artificial intelligence. And why is this frozen? One second, guys. It does appear that my screen is a bit frozen, but nevertheless, I'll just keep on going. But it does show here that when you look at the heat map, people are still aggressively buying into the AI growth types of companies such as Nvidia, AMD, Broadcom, those types of companies. And then you're also going to see other things in the technology sector doing well as well, such as Apple. They had an okay day. Also, it does, it's lots of green in the technology sector. Now, taking a look over at other things related to the broader market, you're going to see here that on CNBC, so on CNBC, you're going to see here that, well, first off, we're going to see that the Dow Jones was up on the day, and as well as the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, they all did have a green day, while bonds, the US 10-year Treasury yield did take a dip. And also, you're going to see here that the Russell 2000, ticker symbol IWN, also did have a good day as well. Now, the reason why I do find that interesting is because if we take a look at Forex Factory, you're going to see here that inflation data did just come out with core PPI and PPI. It does show here that PPI did come in a little bit hot when the forecast was only 0.7%, but it actually came out at 1.1. However, core PPI pretty much, it met expectations roughly. The forecast was for 0.5%, while actual was 0.4%. Greetings from Colombia. Nice to see you, Mohammed. Greetings. Glad to have you here on the live stream. Now, going back to CNBC, you're going to see here that there's lots of interesting data because, as I said at the start of the video, what's going to be coming out tomorrow, what's going to be happening tomorrow is we have the SpaceX IPO happening. And along with that being the main story, SpaceX right now isn't just a space company, because if all they did was launch rockets, this IPO wouldn't be as big of a deal as it is. And the fact of the matter is that the launches themselves isn't just what makes SpaceX so important and so anxiously anticipated for tomorrow on the Friday session, because there's a few things to talk about when it comes to SpaceX and the IPO tomorrow. So first off, you're going to see here that in regards to one thing, which is the Falcon 9 launches, this is currently the workhorse for the global launch industry right now. And as we can see, as you take a look, they have 647 completed missions, 601 total landings, and 566 total reflights right now. And SpaceX, it launches commercial satellites, government payloads, military missions, NASA missions, and Starlink satellites. And the company has dramatically reduced costs through reusable rockets, creating a competitive advantage that many rivals are still trying to match right now. However, SpaceX does appear to be ahead of the curve and beating out the competition in regards to that. Now, The next thing that I want to talk about was in relation to Starlink. So with Starlink, as you do see here, Starlink, it is a satellite internet constellation designed, owned, and operated by SpaceX. Now, talking about that, Starlink, many investors, they believe that Starlink alone would eventually become one of the most valuable telecommunication networks in the world right now. Greetings, Muhammad. And continuing on with Starlink, instead of relying on just cell towers or fiber cables, Starlink, what they do is they use thousands of satellites to provide internet access globally. So in simple terms, what that basically means is in rural areas, ships at sea, airlines, military operations, and remote locations can all connect to the internet. And another thing why SpaceX is so anxiously anticipated for this Friday and why it's looked up to so much is the fact that it's also becoming increasingly important to the United States national security, because the Department of Defense, intelligence agencies, and other government organizations rely heavily on SpaceX for launch services, satellite communications, and resilient-based infrastructure. And as we do see tensions continue to rise, geopolitical tensions specifically rise around the world, space specifically is becoming a critical national security domain. And don't forget the fact that SpaceX also has partnerships with NASA, as NASA also relies heavily on SpaceX as well. And the company SpaceX transports cargo and astronauts to the International Space Station and is playing a major role in future lunar missions. Now, the last part that I want to talk about is none other than Starship. And excuse me, Starship, in simple terms, is potentially what could be the biggest reasons. Yeah, I feel you on that, Mohammed. But Starship is potentially one of the biggest reasons why investors are excited for the SpaceX IPO tomorrow, because Starship is designed to be the largest and most powerful rocket ever built. And Muhammad, thank you for the comment. I do see here that you won't be buying SpaceX tomorrow due to FOMO. I'm actually going to be covering that more in this live stream, because you're not alone in that feeling. It's actually funny because there's a lot of people that do feel the same way that you do. And they're actually concerned that the people that are buying immediately at the IPO is considered dumb money in a way. And they're going to get rug pulled and they're going to really get messed up if they do trade and buy long with this stock. So you're not alone, and we're going to be talking about that more in the live stream here, Mohammed. Now, real quick, for all of you subscribed and watching the live stream, I want you guys to get the bigger picture when it comes to SpaceX, because why many investors don't view SpaceX as just an aerospace company, what they see is multiple things at once. They see an aerospace company, an internet company, a telecommunications company, a defense contractor, an AI and data infrastructure enabler, and a future space transportation company. And they see all of these things combined into a single business, not just a simple launch company. And that's why a lot of people because it's not black and white. There's some people on one end of the spectrum on the bull case side of things and another on the bear side of things. But the people that are optimistic and bullish, their thesis is that they view it as just not just some small launch company, but multiple things all into one company. And they're not just buying, and investors that are buying SpaceX don't view it as just a rocket company. Now, the SpaceX IPO isn't just about SpaceX, but what it also could bring is massive attention to the entire space sector as a whole, because other companies such as Rocket Lab, Lunar, Redwire, what else is there? I said Rocket Lab, Black Sky, and also Planet Labs as well. Those are the 5 that I wanted to talk about today. Those stocks also could potentially benefit due to the fact that the SpaceX IPO is bringing, I mean, there's already a lot of attention on SpaceX alone, but to the whole sector, this could bring more attention to all those other individual companies in the space sector. Now, a few headlines stated in the CNBC website. You're going to see here a few things. How CNBC said, let's see, one article described the IPO. Let me see if I can find every specific one that I saw. So first you got the SpaceX IPO will test how Wall Street prices strategic tech. That's an interesting one. Warren has questions. Warren has questions relating to the SpaceX IPO oversight and new letter to stock indexes. What else do we got here? You also see, I mean, SpaceX is obviously going to be the top of the headlines, but another one, SpaceX is way ahead of competitors with Starlink, as we just talked about earlier in the live stream. But they're saying that growth is harder heading into the IPO. And this one right here I found very interesting. SpaceX IPO won't break the bull market, but investors are worried about what's coming next. And by what's coming next, they mean in the short term. Now, when it comes to the bull side of things, the people that are more optimistic and they view it with a more bullish thesis, the bullish argument is pretty simple for SpaceX in the fact that SpaceX, it dominates launch services. Starlink, it's continuing to grow. The company, it has tremendous competitive advantages, and many investors believe space will become one of the largest economic sectors over the next decade. So when you look at it from the investors that are viewing this from the more bullish and optimistic side of things, that's the argument that they have when they're arguing why they believe that they should be buying SpaceX, whether if it's at IPO or maybe sometime after the IPO. That's just the bullish side of things. When you take it and flip it on the other side, the bear case, the bearish thesis for SpaceX is that the bear case, their main concerns is regarding the valuation, because whenever a company like SpaceX, with what's going on tomorrow, and it's highly anticipated, expectations become enormous. Because I know this is a little bit different, but expectations affects the sentiment of a stock, and the sentiment of a stock will be reflected on the share price of the stock. Because, for example, when you look at Nvidia, every time they have a quarterly report coming up, I do talk about Nvidia a lot to use this as an example when it comes to high expectations, because Nvidia time after time has a quarterly report coming up, and what happens is they'll see that there's a beat on the earnings, but even though that there's a beat on the earnings, the stock price will go down pretty shortly. Will go down shortly after that. And even though that the financials look good and a lot of the business looks good, and for any other company that may make the stock go up, the fact of the matter is that they're worried if Nvidia can continue at these valuations and continue to improve the way that they do. It makes people a little gun shy, and it makes them think, oh, I don't want to be a part of this because I don't see how this can continue. That's kind of a similar situation when it comes to an IPO, especially for something that has high anticipations like SpaceX. And for all of you in the chat, again, because I do see that Mohammed has his opinion. I know you won't buy immediately, but for all of you in the chat, let me know if you guys would buy SpaceX or if you're avoiding it for FOMO. So just let me know below. And if you are buying, just feel free to type buy. And if you're not buying, feel free to type wait. Feel free to do that, guys. Now, next thing that I wanted to talk about, and the funny thing about it is I actually have to give a shout out to all of you in my community, because this is in relation to a video I made yesterday about Big Bear AI. And we're about to hit a few milestones on this channel. 1 second, guys. My thing's loading up right now. So I posted another video on Big Bear AI. Feel free to check that out if you're interested. But let me see here. So regarding Big Bear AI, because the next topic that I want to talk about before I get into all the other individual stocks is about Big Bear AI. Now, first off, again, shout out to you, because this was a big milestone. First ever video to get 2,000 views in less than 48 hours and 1,000 views in under 24 hours. So again, thank you guys very much for tuning in and showing the support that you did. I really do appreciate that. But specifically what I wanted to talk about was the topic of this video right here. What happened was Big Bear AI, they had their annual shareholder meeting, and it wasn't the same as the annual shareholder meeting that Castellum CTM had. It wasn't the same as that one, where it was an hour-long video with the nice slides and presentations. What it was just the typical format that you see in a bunch of other annual shareholder meetings, regarding well, they talked about the voting, the poll that was taking place regarding authorizing additional authorized shares. And it was just a quick 5-minute video where they said if there's any questions, they answered all the questions, and then they just stated the results of the poll, whether if shareholders overall did approve for the additional authorized shares or not. The result was yes, the authorized shares were approved, and now Big Bear AI, as of yesterday, went from having 500 million authorized shares available to now having an additional 500 million shares for a whopping total of 1 billion authorized shares available. And I want to make something very clear. And what I want to make clear is the fact that, especially because a lot of investors are divided about the results from the annual shareholder meeting, from the bullish and bearish side of things, I want to make it very clear that the approval for authorized shares does not mean that these shares were issued immediately. Again, they were just approved. That does not mean that they get issued right after that happens. So I just want to make that very clear, because there's a difference from the shares being issued and the shares just being approved. Now, why investors got angry? Because there were some that were angry, some that were a little more neutral, and some that were a little more positive and optimistic with it. And you can see it here with all the people in the ones that tuned in. You're going to see a lot of different comments. So the main concern was the fact that investors worried that now that management has significantly more flexibility to issue shares in the future. Well, the people that are more bullish with it and positive about it, they viewed it as okay, because they feel that since management has more flexibility, they have some faith that they're going to use those additional authorized shares and the extra funding and the extra capital appropriately to grow the business the way that they did. For example, if you take a look here at somebody that tuned in, let me find his specific comment right here. Shout out to you, Music Man, saying he does not mind the flexibility of having the authorized shares, but he doesn't want the additional authorized shares not to buy any more business. He says, in his opinion, that Big Bear AI needs to get some more revenue and profit on the books before they add any new business. And shout out to you, Rich Buddy, as he said, they are just looking to raise money for AI expansion via shareholder investment, as opposed to taking on debt like Google did. He personally thinks that this is a positive and shows signs of growth and long-term objectives. So basically, in simple terms, people view that the ones that are more positive, they feel that this makes them a lot less constrained. They have a lot more flexibility, and this gives them more opportunity to grow. And they have faith that, well, they either have faith that management is going to use these extra funds appropriately to grow the business properly for potentially more revenue and get closer to profitability, or they do view it the same way, that this gives management more flexibility, but at the same time, they're not 100% sure that management will do it. They're saying they don't mind the additional authorized shares as long as management doesn't misuse the additional funding that they're getting now. But on the flip side, when you look at why investors were against it completely, it was for the main big word, and that's none other than not super dilution, as Riv said, but dilution. And how they view that this will hurt the stock more and take the price of the stock all the way down to $1. And a few people, again, he says dilution kills plays. And some people view this as upsetting because, yes, they wanted the company to raise more capital, but they wanted it to do it in a way that doesn't mess with the current shareholders of the company and screws them over by them having a smaller ownership percentage of the company. Now, with that being said, I want to make very clear, the real question, in my opinion, that I view should be asked if you are a shareholder of Big Bear AI is, the real question isn't whether authorized shares are increased. The real question would be, what will management actually do with that authorization? Because again, what they do with the authorized shares is what determines whether shareholder value is ultimately created or destroyed long term. And my personal opinion, guys, is the fact that It's pretty straightforward. This vote by itself is neither bullish or bearish alone. It's neutral. And what matters now most is execution. And if management create value with that flexibility, then shareholders might not be too worried about the dilution and they still can benefit and win long term. Now, next thing that I want to talk about is going back to SpaceX with what was in the thumbnail of the video. And Mohammed, what did you say here? What I may do tomorrow is to look into other aeronautical spatial companies, like for example, Redwire, and see if their prices are dropping due to SpaceX. I'll be ready to buy those. Real quick, let's take a look at the price action for a second, Mohammed. So there's other people in my community and other people that I have heard just overall in other communities as well that aren't mine, like Reddit, for example. Some people ask me about, let's take a look at Planet Lab, for example. Like, everything is dropping currently at the moment. You're going to see that Planet Lab is trading, close the day at $34.17, which is a lot lower compared to the all-time highs of $51.76. And then, oh, one second, guys. Yeah, so then also you're going to see that Rocket Lab, for example, Rocket Lab, they're also down from the all-time highs, currently trading at $114.78 and 151. I like your idea, Muhammad, and I like the thought process, the fact that you're not thinking like the rest of retail. You're being cautious to buy for reasons of FOMO. You don't want to buy when the prices are increasing, but you want to buy when the prices are dropping, so you buy it at discount prices. And because there is a high likelihood that dumb money might be rotating and heavily buying into the SpaceX IPO, while it might be best that if other money is flowing out of these individual stocks and going into the SpaceX IPO, and we see the stocks like Rocket Lab, Redwire, Lunar, all the other individual space companies drop in price, that might be a good opportunity for buying to scale into a position long term and continue to add as the price drops, if that is what happens tomorrow. But I do like your thought process and how you're being very careful to not buy specifically because of emotional reasons like FOMO. And where things get interesting, I don't think relating to SpaceX, I don't think the story is just SpaceX, but the story is what happens to this entire space economy like we're talking about. Because, yeah, I agree, Mohammed. There's going to be lots of people, lots of retail that are going to be buying SpaceX and are going to get wrecked tomorrow. Trust me, I do agree with you with that. There's going to be lots of people that are going to be crying tomorrow. Now, when it comes to all the other individual companies, you have to understand that the SpaceX IPO is not the only thing that's important for tomorrow. It's how the whole space sector gets affected. And when major companies enter public markets, investors start researching related businesses. What are those related businesses, you may ask? Well, these other individual companies like Rocket Lab, Planet Labs, Intuitive Machines, ticker symbol LUNR, etc. All those different companies are the ones that are in the related businesses as SpaceX. So the question is, if SpaceX can lift the sector entirely, and the bullish argument for that would be they would bring more attention to the space sector. There would be more analyst coverage. There would be more institutional interest overall and more retail investors discovering space stocks as a whole. Now, on the flip side, which is the side that Mohammed is on, I would guess, or I would assume due to the comments he's saying, is there's also the question whether the SpaceX IPO could hurt the rest of the space sector. Because the bear case is that investors, they may sell existing space positions to buy SpaceX directly. And my personal opinion is, personally, I lean towards the neutral position where I do believe that it's going to be technically more bearish in the short term. I do believe that there is going to be somewhat of a sell-off short term. And what I'm going to be doing, because all these space stocks weren't on my watch list and weren't on my radar to buy anytime soon, I'm just going to view this as a stay patient, avoid, and I'm not going to buy any shares tomorrow, whether of SpaceX or any of the other companies. But in my opinion, Mohammed, or anybody else tuning in, If you do want to buy in, I would highly recommend that. And again, this is not financial advice, just my opinion. But if you did want to buy into the space sector, to any individual space companies, I would highly, my opinion would be that you look at the other individual companies like Rocket Lab, Lunar, Redwire, all those other companies, and see if the prices are dipping. And I would start a long-term position if the prices do go lower, because I do think long-term space companies are going to be a winner. Now, talking about individual companies, let's look at Rocket Lab first. Rocket Lab, we're going to see here that they had some recent news not too long ago. Again, Rocket Lab was awarded a $90 million contract to build GEO satellites hosting space domain awareness payload for U.S. Space Force. And what Rocket Lab continues to do is they continue to build one of the strongest businesses in the publicly traded space sector. And certain things that they have are launch services, space systems, government contracts, and commercial customers. And Neutron is what remains one of the biggest catalysts in the industry right now. And personally, what I'm going to be watching is Neutron to see if they continue to develop. So I'm going to be watching the development of Neutron closely, and I want to see if successful execution is going to, if they can continue to execute successfully, and if they do continue to successfully execute, could that expand Rocket Lab's addressable market? Will they expand their addressable market? I kind of misspoke a little bit, so my bad, guys. But yeah, let me just rephrase that. Successful execution can expand Rocket Lab's addressable market. I think I said that right this time. I think we got it. So also, Muhammad and everyone else, are you guys personal owners of Rocket Lab? Just let me know. I'm very curious to get you all's opinions. Now, moving on to another company, which is also heavily tied to defense, we got another one that was awarded a contract. Again, right here on June 4th, very recently, Redwire was awarded a contract from Astrobiome Space to launch inaugural space agriculture mission and world's first commercial space greenhouse. So if you're curious of what that means, you are right. Simple terms, that means they're building food in outer space, which is pretty cool. And what Redwire also does is they're involved in multiple areas of the space economy. They got space infrastructure, manufacturing, defense, and commercial space. And the bull case for the stock is, as the space economy expands, Redwire could potentially benefit from increasing demand for critical infrastructure. Okay, so you feel that this is just going to be another meme coin type of thing. So I don't want to say I necessarily disagree, but I would give a little bit of pushback on that, Muhammad, because, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I do, like me personally, I do dollar cost average on a weekly basis with Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I don't really pay attention to like those meme coins or anything like that. So as far as I remember, they never showed any real world usage, like the way that space stocks do. For example, like when Neutron, they offer real world usage in relating to launching rockets into space, satellites, space agriculture, things like that. And I've never seen the U.S. government view them as something useful enough to where they award them a contract to fund the business and to add to their backlog. If there's anything like that that's happened with meme coins, I'm not aware of. So let me know and correct me if I'm wrong. But I do think it's a little bit different than meme coins, I would say. But I do understand why people can view this as just something that's completely hype and something that won't be sustainable long term, because there still is lots of speculation with space stocks, and there is risk relating to whether or not these individual space companies can execute and continue to execute long term. And by execution, I'm talking about continuing to get more contracts, growing their revenue, becoming more profitable, and actually providing the real world market usage that they say that they can. So that's my take on that opinion, Mohammed. And correct me if I'm wrong. But I do think that it's just a little bit different compared to meme coins. But I do appreciate your input, my man. Now, let's talk about Black Sky briefly. Black Sky had some pretty recent news lately, and oh, okay, and they had some more recent news on June 9th. This is something I was not aware of, so let's take a quick look at it together. So Black Sky, it was awarded an NRO contract modification to accelerate development of AROS as critical commercial alternative for foundation imaging. That's pretty interesting. So I'll have to take a look at this article alone. If any of you guys did see this, feel free to summarize what this is about, because this is my first time seeing the article right now. And I can do a video on it later, but I would have to take another look some other time to give you a better in-depth analysis about it. But that's good that they're getting more PR, and it's also good because they were awarded a contract. But I was going to talk more about the Black Sky and how they secured a 7-figure multi-year renewal contract. And what it was for is to accelerate automation of future non-Earth imagery services. And I just want to point that out. And the bullish and the bearish theses for this stock is the fact that Black Sky, what it does is it operates in satellite image intelligence, and governments and defense agencies increasingly rely on real-time geospatial information. And what I'm watching is if they're going to get more government contracts, which they just got a contract yesterday. I'm looking to see for a commercial adoption, and if they continue to have more subscriber growth. That's what I'm interested to see in my friends. And lastly, when it comes to Planet Labs, the last individual stock I wanted to cover. So they had another article come out yesterday, 2 days ago as well. I didn't take a look at that. I'm happy to do that again and to look it over, but I don't know too much about it. What I wanted to talk about was their recent first quarter for the fiscal year of 2027, because there was lots of good financial data points for the company. As you do see here, a few things that were stated is that revenue of $94 million was up 42% year over year. You're also going to see other financial metrics improve. Like, look at this. Their backlog increased 72% year over year to a whopping number of 906 million. They also, you see that they have some successful launches, and the other financial metric is that end of period cash and cash equivalents, and short-term investments increased 223% year over year to $731 million. So that is some pretty good stuff, and that does show some promise for Planet Labs. Now, the fact of the matter is, let's look at the price action for Planet Labs real quick. Planet Labs did sell off even after the article came out, as you do see here. And even though that they had all those highlights, some people were questioning why it was Planet Labs sold off the way that it did. Now, markets, what they often care about is future expectations more than current results. And investors, what they want is proof that Planet Labs can continue scaling and eventually achieve sustainable profitability. So, and also, as you do know, and as you get more aware with the the market and how it behaves, you're gonna understand it's not black and white. And just because there's good news does not mean that short term the price reflects that they accepted that good news in a positive way, even if it is good news. Sometimes the stock can fall even lower, even when there is recent good news that came out. And when it comes to Planet Labs specifically, what I want to be watching is to see if they get more government contracts as well. I'm going to be looking for commercial customers, the artificial intelligence integration, and the progress for whether or not they can show sustainable profitability in the long term. So I want to ask you guys specifically, for all of you that tuned in, I want to know, do you believe we're entering a new investing cycle? Because my biggest takeaway tonight is, for years, investors, what they've been waiting for are exciting IPOs. And now suddenly, not only do we have the SpaceX IPO coming out tomorrow, we also have two other ones that are very highly anticipated, with OpenAI, which is responsible for ChatGPT, and we also have Anthropic as well. So 3 IPO headlines, all in a very narrow amount of time. So potentially all entering public markets. They're all entering public markets around the same time. And at the same time, AI, artificial intelligence, it remains one of the most hyped and sectors, and it remains one of the strongest themes in investing right now. And the space economy right now is beginning to attract more attention than it has ever done before. It already has been gaining attention, but it's kind of boosting and speeding up the progress with the SpaceX IPO in the headlines right now. So to me, this feels like the beginning of a new cycle, and it's one that's driven by two major themes. That is artificial intelligence and the space economy. Now, a few questions I have for you. I want to know, what are your biggest questions relating to SpaceX, or other individual companies like Rocket Lab, Lunar, Black Sky, Planet Labs, even Big Bear Eye and Defense. And if you are looking to buy tomorrow, I just want to know what your plan is besides Muhammad. So I'll open it for questions right now. And while I wait for anybody to ask a question, if there are any, no pressure if you guys don't want to ask, but I just love getting those inputs. If you enjoyed tonight's live stream, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and check out the links below. The first link for the free InvestQ community. Here, let's just take a quick look at the links right here, my friends. So first and foremost, if you guys are interested, feel free to take all the links in my channel. So if you go onto my channel right now, you're going to see here, for all of you that have been staying, I got 3 links for you guys if any of you are interested. So first and foremost, I got 3 links. So first, we have the InvestQ, completely free of charge. If you guys are interested, feel free to join that. Again, it's my free InvestQ community with a bunch of other like-minded investors that love the stock market. Feel free to get into that. Feel free to get in to that community if you would like. Muhammad, I love it. I'll get to your questions in just a second. Now, the next link is relating to Prophecy AI. And also, speaking of Prophecy AI, if you're interested and you do join my free of charge InvestQ community, again, you can feel free to try the $7 7-day trial if you are just looking to get your feet wet, as it does give you a lot of useful information that you guys see I use constantly on my channel. I always have it in the background. And last but not least, I just started a new Instagram account. Very small account right now, but I just started it. If you are interested in taking a look at that, feel free to follow me on there. And I would appreciate the support, as word of mouth and people showing the support and joining is what helps this channel grow and helps give you guys the factual information that does help other investors make educated decisions with their portfolios. And okay, I see you, Muhammad. So Muhammad, when it comes to Lunar, Intuitive Machines, Black Sky, Planet Labs, and Rocket Lab, are you just saying that you own all of those companies? Let me ask Muhammad. Do you own all of those space stocks? But yeah, I'm very excited. And also, guys, last thing that I wanted to show you is, if you are interested in tuning in tomorrow at Market Open, at 9 o'clock a.m., I will be doing a live stream at the IPO for the SpaceX IPO. So feel free to check that out tomorrow if you're interested. Let me take a look at that. So yeah, feel free to take a look at that. Let's see here. Okay, well, Mohammed, I just gave my opinion on all those companies already in the live stream. But to summarize my opinion on the live, on all those companies specifically, I do think all of them are very good overall. again, I do think that a lot of them are going to grow in the long term. I could take a look deeper again and do another video looking at the underlying business of all those companies. But if you do want to take a look at that, again, I'm just saying stick to the plan of not buying in for FOMO and only get in if we do see the price action dip. That's all I'll say to summarize it. Oh, oh, okay. Oh, okay. Hold on. What do you need me to hold on for? Okay. Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. Yeah, just you can take a look at the video back, and I just did a quick little a quick little talk relating to all those individual stocks. And I do also have previous videos of Rocket Lab and all those individual space stocks if you are interested. But also feel free to check out tomorrow at market open. I'll be live 30 minutes before at 9 o'clock a.m. EST. If you are interested to join me live to watch the results of what happens at the SpaceX IPO. So, with that being said, all of my viewers and Mohammed, thank you all for tuning in. But with that being said, guys, stay safe, keep making good decisions with your long term portfolios, and I'll see you on the next video. Dog shit.